Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our next installment of Exploring Our World, where we here at Colonial Williamsburg dive deeper into the minds and daily experiences of those living in the 18th century. Please feel free at any point during the program today to write in a comment with any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer them live on the air. I'm Stacey Loveland. I'm here with Elaine Moore, and today we're going to be taking a look at a quintessential 18th century experience, taking tea. So, Elaine, when's a good time for tea?
Anytime's a good time for taking tea. You might break your fast in the morning with tea, and then you might have tea socially, like we have it set up right over here. You might take tea with your dinner between 2 and 4. You might take tea with your supper between 8 and 9. So anytime's a good time for tea.
Now, if we're going to be taking tea, there's a lot of things on the table right now. Do we need all of this in order to have tea?
Well, this is basic equipage right over here. Something that a middling class family would have. A Mr. Getty, the silversmith down the street, or Mr. Powell, that undertaker or contractor, mind you, down the street. It is a little mismatched, but that's okay. You see, tea is coming, tea and the equipage is coming from China. The equipage is in the bottom of the ship, and the tea is on top of it. So it's a little stopgap between the tea getting wet. And so a lot of things break.
And the equipage is all the cups and saucers and things like that?
All the things that you see here. Now, this is basic. Okay, and it's okay, it's mismatched, but as you get farther and farther up that social chain, you want a little bit more match. Perhaps you'll have a little container for the spoons. Maybe you'll have a special tray. You have more and more things on your table, and the more and more proper it becomes, right? But let's start with the basics, right? Over here we have a teacup, a saucer, and a spoon. And this is imported. It is from China. It is the Amari pattern over here.
This one too.
Do you notice something?
There's no handles on these teacups.
Yeah, and that's in the early years. That's how it was imported. There were no handles on the teacup, but that causes a problem. Yeah. So when we start making it, the English start making the teacups, we have handles on it. Speaking of the English, we have our creamware here, and this has a special logo on it. It says No Stamp Act on it, political statement. And then we have our creamware sugar container.
Like the flour on top.
Yes. And then we have our creamware for milk or cream, either or. And then we have our slop bowl right over here, because there's a little bit of waste, right? And we have our mote spoon. It has little holes in it. It has a pointy end. We have our strainer. And then we have over here our tea chest with the goodly stuff inside, the black tea from China in a lead-lined container. Yes, we realize that the lead keeps it fresher longer. We don't do that anymore.
That's fake lead, right?
Yes, it's fake lead. Yes.
Now, we're going to be having tea today, but a few things have already been done to start the preparation, so we didn't have to do them here. What has already been taken care of for us
the water's
today?
been boiled.
Oh.
Yeah. And so here's our tea kettle, later called a samovar. And that, we're going to refill this and refill this and refill this. And so that is boiled by the lady of the household or her staff, her servant, or her slave person that keeps that water hot, right, for the length of the occasion. Right? And we have also taken our pot and we have warmed it with using a little bit of hot water, because one thing that the English don't do right away well is make a hard paste porcelain that holds up to the heat. We don't want to crack our pot. So a little bit of water in there, swirl it around, dump that water in the slop bowl, and then we've already put a scoop of tea in for each person here. and one for the pot, right? And filled it up with the hot water. And, well, then we let it steep. We let it seep. We let it unfurl those leaves, right? And so we do our little chit-chat in the meantime while it is steeping or seeping. So,
all right. So since we've done that, how do we begin serving tea? I guess I need a napkin, don't I?
yes, you do. There we go.
All right, then what?
All right. So we've already had it seeped or steeped. And so do you want cream?
No, thank you.
Okay. And do you want sugar?
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, sugar over here is in lumps. Right? You might offer 1 or 2 lumps of sugar. There is we have a sugar cone over here. It's coming from the Sugar Islands. It's wrapped in the indigo dye paper. Indigo is a natural bug repellent, and it's very hard. And so we need a sugar hatchet, chop it up. It truly is lumps, right? And three lumps would be a little expensive. You know, you're really, really doing something for that. And then, of course, the milk or the cream. Now, do you serve cream? Do you serve milk? Prince Brogy wrote in his journal that he really feels that American milk is cream, and he's had enough of it, basically, in very prettier words than that. That's a paraphrase. So if you want the cream in first, you want the cream in last, well, do what you want, because they're doing that in the 18th century, right? But there are some folks that are very serious about putting that cream in first.
I believe
right?
that.
And then you take the strainer, because it's loose leaf tea. Right? And so you take the strainer, and I'm going to pour you a cup of tea because you're our honored guest, right? And then we're going to take the teapot, and remember, it's already steeped, and we're pouring it, and we're pouring it. There we go. I think that's enough, right? Or at least you told me that's enough, right? And then we're going to take our dregs, and we're going to put it in the slop bowl, right? All right. And then we're going to swing it on over to you. And there's your cup of tea.
Now, the tea that you just served our guests have some questions about the tea that they're being served. Mark Richmond Sr. wants to know, what type of tea could you compare the tea we drink today to the tea that the colonial Americans enjoyed?
Well, we're drinking, really you can't compare it, because a lot of the tea that we're drinking now is from India, was from Ceylon, has been cultivated and altered over time. It's still the same plant, it's still the Camellia sinensis, but it's grown in different conditions and in different combinations, so we might call it a tea blend, right? Whereas, and they're even drinking blends in the day, but it's really not the same. So let's go, if we're going to take a wild leap on it, let's go with a black tea, a basic black tea would be equal to their tea of the day.
Awesome. Jane actually asked what tea is closest related, so that's perfect. Thank you, Jane.
Thanks, Jane.
Awesome. So how is this tea getting to us? Is it coming in the loose leaves? Missy asked if it's arriving in leaf form or in big blocks. What are we seeing?
By the time of the Revolution, it's all loose leaf tea. It's not in those tea cakes, okay, as in the early years, or in the gunpowder form. It is the loose leaf tea, but as it's coming in the ships, it is tightly bound together. So when they had to go in Boston Harbor and all the tea didn't sink and they had to go and sink it, yes, it is loose leaf tea, but it was so tightly bound together, some of it floated.
Okay.
Right?
Makes sense. And you kind of already started talking about what I was going to ask. I know we've presented tea so far as being a very social thing, but when I think of tea in the 18th century, I think of something really political. So is tea a very political thing in the 18th century, or was it just that one occurrence?
Right off the bat, it's political, right? Catherine of Braganza, who comes from Portugal to marry Charles II, right? She brings a lot of money into that marriage, and well, he would have liked more, but part of it is tea, and it becomes popular at court because of her. Now, there's a whole chain of it coming through Europe, but it kind of sticks in England. And then the Honorable East India Company has their monopoly in 1660, and they have a complete monopoly on importing tea, and so it's political there. The tax on tea, it becomes at one point 119%.
Oh my goodness.
So do you think people are going to buy it legally?
No.
They're going to smuggle it from Holland and other places, right? But it's all coming from China.
Okay. So Karen asked a question along those lines. All the tea at the time is being grown in China? There's nothing you can get outside of China?
It's not that they're not trying. Okay, once they have their spies in China, they do try to smuggle out plants, but it's unsuccessful. They don't understand the cultivating of plants. So all the tea in the 18th century is coming from China, and eventually later, another century, they do make a headway in India, in Assam, right? But when in our history, we're talking about revolutionary times, all tea is coming from China, and it is a mystery to us. It's a mystery, and they like it that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they're very protective of their tea culture.
Now, seeing what we're experiencing today, a setup where we're able to sit here and have a conversation, I think we're all pretty used to thinking about tea in this setting with two women sitting and talking over the tea table. Is tea gendered in the 18th century? Is this something only for the ladies of the house?
No, it's for families, it's for ladies socializing, it's for men socializing, it's for men and women together. So there's certain things that if the family's together, mother's going to pour, right? Or if it's ladies together, it might be the head of the household, but it might be the youngest married woman. Or if you got a 14-year-old that needs to learn this, because it can be nerve-wracking, you're going to bring her into practice. Of course, with auntie and grandma, right? We also know that men, it might be the youngest married man serving if it's just men. But they also, if they're the same rank, somebody might say, who's going to play mother today, right? With men and women together, we do know from Miss Shippen's diary that you could spread out in the room, and it was men and women together, young and old together. Now, the way this intelligence comes by us is a little bit, her beau stopped by, but he stopped by the window and looked in and saw her at tea, and then didn't go and announce himself and come in. No, later he sends her a little letter that marks the spot of where everybody was sitting, who was at the fireplace, who was in the corner. Little creepy, but at least that is another verification that you did spread out. You weren't glued to the tea table here.
Now, hearing that, it sounds like everything you've described so far requires some amount of leisure time, which as a historian, I know we tend to associate mostly with the upper sorts, the gentry sort, the upper middling sort. Is everyone able to take tea in the 18th century?
Lorena Walsh and other researchers put forth that by 1773, there's enough tea here for everybody to have a cup of tea a day. So, you're not the richer, more gentrified people are going to have more tea more often, the better tea. Right?
But other people can still have it.
You can still have it. But why there's the seconds, third, and fourths here in the slop bowl. Now, if you're a servant or an enslaved person, your master or mistress might allow you to take the seconds, right? And you might use it yourself, or you might sell it to make a little side.
Oh, wow.
A little pocket change over there. But yes, now, second, third, I don't know about the fourths, but I've read that some people take it up to 4 times. How many times do you use a tea bag?
Once, if even.
Oh, come on, at least twice.
Kind of along the same lines, Christine asks, are there rules or guidelines for when black tea is being served versus green tea? Is one type of tea less expensive, so associated with upper versus middling sort?
No, in the early years, the only tea coming in was the green tea, and it was hyped as a curative in all the newspapers at the time. But then eventually the black tea comes in. So you might have a tea chest that is cut down the center, and you might have green tea in one and black tea in the other, and it's up to you what you're going to take. They're about the same price, a penny or two a cup. A pound of tea makes around 186 to 200 cups of tea, wow. First time use, okay? And then, it is on the affordable side of expensive,
okay.
Right? Everybody's having coffee, chocolate, tea at the time.
Mike asks, what are the measurements for tea to water? What is that ratio? I know you said 1 scoop for everyone at the table and 1 for the pot, but are the teapots all the same size? Is that something you can use?
Yeah, most of them are going to have 5 cups in them. Okay, so you would put 6 scoops of loose leaf tea to a pot because it's 1 per cup or per person, and then 1 just to be safe. Right, just 1 for the pot. So you're going to get 6 cups, and that's why we have our samovar kettle here to keep refilling that teapot and making sure that there's a fresh cup of tea. Speaking of that, do you want any more tea?
I don't think so.
Oh, well, do you know the rules for that?
Do I turn my cup over?
Yes, you knew it. I knew you knew it. You could do that, or you can just put your teaspoon on top like that. This way the hostess can see non-verbally. So you're carrying on a conversation and she's busy making sure if you want it, because it would be very uncomfortable. You couldn't refuse a cup of tea once it's poured. Okay, that's rude.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, as part of pouring the tea, you were turning the table, and Denise asks if everyone had a tea table that turns, or is that a status item? Is that just personal taste? How does that factor in?
It is the most popular. Okay. The tilt top and turn table is the most popular with the 3 legs on the bottom, but there are also the square rectangular tables where you line everything up and just you pour and go. Right?
And we've also had a lot of questions coming in about things you're adding to the tea.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, Betsy asked, would honey have been an option for sweetening the tea? We have sugar, but sugar's expensive, it's being imported, you have to chisel it. Are there other options for things to add to your tea?
Well, it's not written down if you're doing it, okay? It is not... It is not what we're expecting when we're at tea, right? So if you're going to put a little honey in your tea, you're kind of doing it at your own will. It's a good idea, but we're not putting honey, we're not putting lemon in it. That comes later.
Lemons are for punches and things, right?
Yes, yeah, they're very expensive. So when you think of a lemon or a lime, any kind of a citrus, that's for a punch.
All right. Was there anything else on the table? For example, Carol wants to know if they had finger food or anything served with tea in addition to having a beverage, having a snack.
We might have bread and butter on the table. Later on, that we're going to have the fancy foods, we're going to have the little biscuits or cookies or whatever, but at this time it's usually just bread and butter and tea. The tea is enough of an occasion for it. Now, we do know when people are going to the gardens at Ronley or Vaux Hill in England, they are paying to hear the music, right, to go around the gardens, and tea is included in that penny admission. But if you wanted bread and butter, you had to pay another penny, right? So we know it's not a normal thing to have. Tea is enough of an occasion. But later on, of course, we have to have that high tea.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, with the Industrial Revolution, of course, we change our eating habits, right? Instead of breakfast and dinner between 2 and 4 and supper later, we're having breakfast and we're having lunch at work, and then we're having dinner later on. Those that are making tea a special occasion need that tea and biscuits and other stuff, right, to get them from lunch to dinner. Right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I've gotten a couple questions coming in from different people about where things are coming from. So I know that you said the tea itself is coming from China, but Mikhail wants to know, where did everything else on the table come from? You have the tea ware, you have sugar, you have cream. What's imported, what's made locally?
Okay, that's a good question. So the tea is coming from China, as we have established. The teacup here is coming from China, and it's hard paste porcelain. This is a Wedgwood piece. This is coming from England, and the pieces that we have here were actually made in Leeds, England. Okay, the creamware is also called Queensware because Wedgwood was a smart man. He sent a whole set to the Queen, and he said, "Did you like it?" And she said, "Yes." And so he said, "Can I call it Queensware?" And she said yes, and so he got a little extra business for that. You could also get it with any other design, a large cabbage rose on here, or king's rose, so that's coming from England, Leeds. The silver could be coming from, and this is actual silver, if you see it nice and bright and shiny there, could come from down the street from our silversmith shop, or it could come, and it probably is cheaper to import it, right? That's coming from England or here. And then the tea caddy, that too can come from a local shop, or I should say tea chest instead of tea caddy because that word comes in later. But from a local shop, or it is cheaper coming in from England. Usually it's cheaper to import things than it is to make it here.
Well, I know Ava had asked if it's common to have the sugar cone. I'm bringing this back. I know sugar was being imported. Is it common to have that since that's something else that's being imported?
Well, it's not common to have it on the table. We put it here just so you could see that it comes in cone form. But people are importing sugar, and they're losing their teeth for it, too.
I had a question from Christian about herbal tea in the 18th century as medicinal versus non-medicinal qualities. Can you speak to that at all?
Well, yes, we're using our tisanes for our from our kitchen gardens to cure our aches and pains and stuff. But when we are making a point of not importing the tea, that's when we use our tisanes, our herbal teas, as a substitute for the actual tea.
Pam asked a question that I quite like. She wants to know, were the children joining in tea time? You mentioned 14-year-old women learning how to pour tea and how to serve, but when do kids start taking tea?
Oh, they're going to start right away. They're going to start just like they're drinking small beer at the time. Yes, you say children and beer, well, water will kill you, right? right? They know that boiled water for the tea or the coffee or the chocolate is healthful because you don't get sick from it. They also know that the beer doesn't seem to get you sick either, and that's because of the fermentation process in the beer.
And so, that was small beer, right?
Yeah,
way
small
less
beer.
alcoholic than what we're used to today. Only like 2.5%
yes.
versus 5 or 6, right?
Correct. You got me there. Yeah.
Just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. So because we see benefits of tea in a number of ways and how popular it is, Eldon wants to know, is this the most common drink in Virginia on the eve of the Revolution?
It is. By far, tea is more popular than coffee and chocolate. It's considered a necessity by the time of the Revolution. And that's why it's such a sacrifice when we have to stand up for our brothers and sisters in Boston, with that little incident, that we decide not to import tea and other things. And it is a suffering for us to not have our tea. You paid good money for it. Now, you might keep it up in your room. You have tea, you might keep it up in your room and use it medicinally.
Of course.
Right. But only till it's gone. You're not going to buy any more tea when we're making our statement to England, right?
But people were starting to find their own versions of tea in America, weren't they, when they couldn't import it?
Right. We're going to use our Liberty teas. Liberties, huh? So what do you got for me there?
I have this one.
What's it smell like? What is that one?
It's lavender.
Lavender is a typical addition, a
Smells
tisane, but then we're going to call it tea and we're going to call it good, right? And that.
This one smells like lemons.
It is lemon balm. It is lemon balm.
And I think I already know what's in here.
Is that your favorite?
It is my favorite.
It's a peppermint? There we go. So all of these teas would be put in different combinations, used just like tea, because we're not giving up our social time just because we're protesting, right? We're keeping that, and we're not using the tea. Now, there's whole articles in the Virginia Gazette that tell us exactly what to use from our gardens to make these Liberty teas. Some even suggest to get the tannins up to make it taste more like tea. Put in white oak bark.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we can drink normal tea again.
Yes.
Did they add anything to tea? Maureen wants to know, did they add alcohol? I know you mentioned some of the other caffeinated beverages, coffee and chocolate. Alcohol was added to that. Are they doing the same to tea?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. But definitely we have evidence of it being added to the chocolate and the coffee.
Something else can be added to tea. Claire Marie asks if teas were ever iced or chilled in any way in the summertime. Like we have iced tea today. Did you cool them down, or were you drinking it warm even on a day like today where it's over 100 degrees?
We're drinking it warm. That is our standard. We're drinking warm tea. That warm liquid that warms the heart, yes.
I know we talked a little bit about how tea was political. Ruth asks if the royalists and loyalists minded essentially the sentiment against tea that was going around in teapots that said no Stamp Act on them.
Right. Well, this is from 1765. These pots were sold with these logos in England in support of our protest, our Stamp Act protest. So a lot of folks mistakenly say that all the English were against us, but no, this proves that these were sold in England with this logo, and so it shows that there was support for the colonies in England.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
We had a question from Christian asking about tea in the military. Do you know of any sources that mention taking tea while at war or in perhaps a higher-ranked officer's tent?
Oh, yes. There's plenty of mention of taking tea once it is allowable. Once we have those prize ships, once we're selling the tea for the cause, right? Tea gets its rightful place again. And General Washington is, it's documented that he takes tea here, there, and otherwise, sometimes with some ladies, right? So it becomes a social event again. But yes, they are having tea as part of the officers' regatta.
How long are these tea visits lasting, whether it's George Washington coming to visit someone or, a lower sort family taking tea in their own home? How long is this ceremony going on for?
Ooh, well, hour or two. You might have an hour or two. It's a social occasion, and so you're going to be spending time. You might you're not only taking the tea, the tea is the opportunity, the enticement to sit down together, to be social together, to read the paper, to share the news, right? Not gossip.
Of course, never
Right?
gossip.
To read a book. And later on, we'll have those blue stockings, those very well-educated English ladies who set the example of, no, we're not going to do cards. Okay, we're going to talk about this book, right? And but they start with tea, so it's the opportunity to be social.
I like that.
Just sit down.
JJ asks a fantastic question. JJ says, how common was sugar in tea at this point? I know many abolitionists boycotted sugar in tea in England. Was that as common in the U.S. at this time? We've talked a lot about unfree labor being involved in everything we see here.
Right.
We
see sugar as a sign of status, that to have sugar on the table, and offering 1 or 2 lumps, oh my, you're something. We don't have that big to-do about where is it coming from, right? As a matter of fact, everything you see here is built on the backs of others, right?
That's a lot.
Indentured servants, mostly enslaved, from the tea to the sugar, to the cream, to the people that made the table, right? This is all made with the labor of other people. And so we have here, now I'm not saying that every Virginian owned a slave, that they didn't, but here in Colonial Williamsburg, it's such a rich population that 50% of the people in this town are enslaved.
Wow.
And so, yes, but we don't have that big abolitionist movement yet. We're trying to, it is in England, but we've got enough of our own problems over here. We're referring to ourselves as slaves of England, right? So the conversation is happening, but we're going to take care of our own problem first. And later, because we didn't take care of the problem in the first place, it's going to build into another war.
Skylar asks about the very pieces we were just gesturing to. We talk about unfree labor being involved in the production of them in the 18th century. Skylar wants to know if these are the originals that we're using here or if these are reproductions made in a different way.
Yeah, these are all reproductions. Thank you to our donors. Some of them have been taken from the Powell House, and some have been taken from the Getty House. I do know that the Getty objects over here were actually made in the plant in Leeds where the original creamware was made. They don't do that anymore. The plant is closed down. There are plans to redo the factory, but not in the same location. So we've lost that. We've gotten maybe one of the last pieces that have come out of there.
And we know a lot of what these things look like, both through pieces that survive intact as well as archaeological digs revealing whole pieces or, more commonly, smaller portions of creamware and other porcelains and china from the time. And we're going to put a link in the comments to a blog that our archaeologists did where they talk a little bit about some of the things we've found for our own collection as well. So if you look through the comments, you'll see a link to that as well. Awesome. Ruth wants to know why the tea caddies were being locked. There's a key attached to it.
Oh, yes.
It's tea.
And I have it attached so I don't lose it. Right? But this would probably be worn by the lady of the household because tea is relatively expensive. It's not cheap. It is a penny or two is 1/20th of a working man's salary. So, but I worked it out with that the coffee guy.
Oh, Mr. Charlton.
Yeah. And it turns out that it's 1/22nd. If you go out and have a coffee in modern times, spending, what, $5?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You have one a day. We're going to give you 2 days off, right? And you're making $14 an hour. That's 1/22 of your income. So
hasn't changed too much,
has
it?
Hasn't changed too much, right?
Elizabeth wants to know. She says she's heard that they used to put the milk or cream in the cups first to help temper the tea as it went into the china so the cups wouldn't crack. Is that true? And I know you said that we have the porcelain coming from China here, but I'm going to piggyback off that question. Were they using creamware where that would be necessary?
Some people do that. It's a matter of preference, okay? Some people do say you do that first so it doesn't crack. Other people say you can control the cream better if you put it in last. So you don't know what kind of tea you're getting until it's poured. Right? And so you need to judge your tea if you need a little cream or sugar in it.
So the tea might be cool enough by the time it's been in the teapot that even if you have a creamware cup, it's not going to break the cup from being warm,
correct.
right? Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Jennifer wants to know, was the serving of tea explicitly taught to all young ladies, or is that only for the gentry class and anyone could serve in any other class?
Well, it is definitely taught in the upper class to do it a certain way, right? If the Countess of Coventry tells you that you are going to serve with your pinky up, you are going to do that, right? Because this is how they control people, by requiring of you a certain action. Right? So with that, yes, everybody in that household is going to learn to do it the way the Countess wants it done. Right? And in your own household, you do it how your mom teaches you, how your dad teaches you. In most of the 18th century pictures that I have viewed, paintings that I have viewed, we have either a female servant or a woman pouring. I have one Dutch portrait that's 1600s that shows a dad pouring. Yeah. So.
Paige asked a question that I think goes along with our last question really well. Paige says, how many teacups or tea bowls would a person normally have in their tea set? I mean, if we're talking about everyone taking tea, can you talk about what would be the norm between the rich, the poor, the enslaved, the free taking tea?
Okay. Specifics. Let's see. We would have the basics that you see here. Perhaps 8 teacups and saucers. And if you were in a higher class, you might have 12 to 24 cups and saucers. And of course, you have to have the equal number of spoons for that too. But usually only 1 creamer, sugar, and you might have a spare teapot, right?
Awesome. Well, Elaine, thank you so much. I want to say thank you to all of you who watched with us today and to all of you who submitted your questions. We got to as many as we could. And I want to say a special thank you to our donors as well. This program and the other programs like it that we've been able to do wouldn't be possible without the support of all of you, our donors and those who view and participate with us. So thank you. We are so glad that you were able to join us today, that you could watch with us, and we hope that we're going to get to see you in person here with us in Colonial Williamsburg very soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for teaching us all about tea, Elaine, and I hope you all have a good afternoon.